Every year, the supplement industry generates billions of dollars selling people back the minerals that real food used to provide for free. Walk into any pharmacy, and you'll find an entire shelf dedicated to magnesium capsules, powders, gummies, slow-release tablets, and chelated formulas with names most people can't pronounce. And yet the ancient world had no supplement aisle, no chelated magnesium glycinate, no lab-certified capsules, just seeds, greens, beans, and the wisdom to know which parts of the plant to eat and how to prepare them. Here is the thing that should stop you cold. The mineral that supports over 300 enzyme reactions in the human body, the one your heart, nerves, muscles, and sleep all depend on, was once delivered through everyday meals. Through a handful of seeds, a pot of simmered greens, a bowl of beans that had soaked overnight, foods that people called dinner. Not medicine. Today we're counting down 13 magnesium-rich foods drawn from ancient tradition and confirmed by modern science, and we're doing it in a way that most nutrition content never attempts. We're going to tell you not just what to eat, but how to prepare it, the way people actually did before industrial processing stripped the bioactive intelligence out of everything it touched. Pay close attention to number 1. Most people reading this have walked past this plant 100 times and never once thought to put it on a plate. And stay with me to number 7. There. We're going to stop and tell the story of a man who collapsed in the desert, a story from the Hebrew scriptures that reads, "In the light of modern physiology, less like mythology, and more like a precise clinical description of what happens when the human body runs completely out of fuel." That story may change how you think about what food actually is. This is not medical advice. No single food replaces qualified care when something is seriously wrong. But food is foundational. And the foundation of the modern diet: white flour, refined oil, processed sugar, contributes almost nothing to the body's magnesium supply. When the foundation is weak, every structure built on top of it begins to crack. Number 13. Pumpkin seeds. Every autumn, families across the world hollow out pumpkins, scoop the seeds into a bowl, and throw them directly into the rubbish. They keep the shell for decoration. They discard one of the most concentrated sources of magnesium found anywhere in the plant kingdom. A single ounce of raw pumpkin seeds, a small handful, contains approximately 150 milligrams of magnesium. That's nearly 40% of the daily value most adults need. Held inside seeds that cost almost nothing and last for months when stored properly. Ancient cultures from Mesoamerica to the Middle East understood something fundamental. The seed is the most nutritionally dense part of the plant, because it carries everything the next generation needs to survive. You don't waste it. You dry it, store it, and eat it through winter. The Aztecs used pumpkin seeds, which they called pepitas, both as food and as trade currency. In Ayurvedic medicine, the seeds of members of the cucurbit family were prescribed for urinary complaints, parasitic infection, and nervous tension. These traditions were separated by oceans and centuries, and yet they converged on the same small seed. Modern science gives us the mechanism. Magnesium operates as a cofactor in ATP synthesis, the process by which your cells manufacture energy. It regulates voltage-gated calcium channels in nerve and muscle cells, which is the biochemical reason low magnesium often manifests as muscle cramps, eye twitches, and restless legs at night. Pumpkin seeds also contain a notable amount of zinc, which operates synergistically with magnesium in testosterone regulation and immune function. Studies from the University of Vienna and other institutions have investigated pumpkin seed extracts in the context of benign prostatic hyperplasia. With results researchers consider worth continued exploration. Here is the preparation detail most people miss entirely. Raw pumpkin seeds are excellent, but soaking them for 8 hours in water with a pinch of sea salt, then rinsing and dehydrating them at below 115 degrees Fahrenheit, activates enzymes and reduces phytic acid, a compound that binds to minerals in the gut and carries them out of the body unused. The traditional Aztec preparation involved a similar principle. Seeds were often soaked, then dried in the sun. This wasn't decoration. It was nutritional intelligence that we now understand at a molecular level. Add a small handful to oatmeal. Stir them into soups just before serving. Eat them plain in the afternoon instead of reaching for a processed snack. The hulless green variety, often sold as pepitas, provides the cleanest mineral delivery. The ones buried in cheap oil and excessive salt walk you directly back into the food system that created the problem. The seed is the beginning of life. Our ancestors never threw it away. Neither should we. Number 12. Chia seeds. Long before chia appeared in cafe, smoothie bowls beside a sprig of mint, it was carried by runners. The Raramuri people of the Copper Canyon in northern Mexico, sometimes called the Tarahumara, became documented for covering extraordinary distances through rugged canyon terrain. Ethnobotanical records and accounts from Jesuit missionaries in the 17th century noted chia as a regular component of the diet. A small pouch of seeds, a quantity of water, enough to sustain hours of movement through heat and altitude. 1 ounce of chia seeds provides approximately 95 milligrams of magnesium, along with calcium, phosphorus, and alpha-linolenic acid, the plant-based omega-3 fatty acid. But what makes chia biochemically unusual is its behavior in liquid. The seeds are coated with a soluble fiber that, when hydrated, forms a gel within minutes. This gel slows gastric, emptying the rate at which food leaves the stomach, which produces a gradual, sustained release of glucose into the bloodstream rather than a sharp spike and crash. This is precisely what distance runners need. It's also what people managing blood sugar fluctuations need. Here is the preparation nuance that most sources omit. Chia seeds do not need to be ground to release their nutrition, unlike flaxseed, which does, but they do need to be fully hydrated. Dry chia seeds consumed without adequate fluid can absorb moisture from the digestive tract itself, which is the opposite of helpful. The traditional preparation was simple. Stir 2 tablespoons into a full glass of water. Allow it to sit for at least 15 minutes until the gel forms. And drink it. The texture is distinctive, slightly viscous, soft, almost porridge-like, and once you adjust your expectation, it becomes an easy morning or pre-activity habit. Researchers have noted that the combination of omega-3 fatty acids and magnesium in chia may support endothelial function, the health of the cells lining blood vessels. Both nutrients play roles in prostaglandin synthesis and nitric oxide production, which affect vascular tone. The science is developing, and no one food is a cardiovascular solution. But the convergence of magnesium, fiber, and plant-based omega-3 inches, one tiny seed is nutritionally serious. After the Spanish conquest of Mexico, many indigenous crops were actively suppressed. Foods that had sustained civilizations were labeled primitive simply because they belonged to people who had been conquered. We didn't lose these foods because they failed anyone. We lost them because history buried them. That they've returned at all is worth noting. Think of chia as endurance wisdom compressed into something smaller than a grain of rice. Number 11. Almonds, the traveler's medicine that crossed ancient trade routes. In the Book of Numbers, when the Israelite leaders needed a way to confirm divine authority, God instructed Moses to collect a rod from each of the 12 tribes of Israel and place them in the tabernacle overnight. By morning, one rod had budded, blossomed, and produced ripe almonds overnight, from dry wood, in a closed tent. The almond was chosen as the symbol of miraculous confirmation, not the grape, not the fig, not the date, the almond. This was not arbitrary. The almond tree blooms earlier than virtually any other fruit tree in the Levant, sometimes in January, before its own leaves appear. The Hebrew name shaked derives from the root word meaning to hasten, to be vigilant, to watch. The almond was a symbol of wakefulness and readiness. It appears again in the Exodus account in the design of the golden lampstand, the menorah, where the cups are described as shaped like almond blossoms. This was a civilization that had been watching the almond tree carefully for a very long time. An ounce of raw almonds provides approximately 75 milligrams of magnesium alongside vitamin E, manganese, riboflavin, and monounsaturated fats. Greek physicians described almonds as both nutritive and medicinal. Persian gardens cultivated almond trees as a prestige crop. Arab traders carried them along the Silk Road. The same food, valued across independent civilizations for overlapping reasons. Magnesium in almonds works in part through its effect on insulin signaling. Research published in the journal Diabetes Care and elsewhere has examined the relationship between dietary magnesium intake and insulin sensitivity. With findings, researchers consider meaningful enough to sustain continued investigation for adults over 60, where cellular responsiveness to insulin often changes. This relationship is clinically relevant. The preparation detail that changes everything: soak almonds in cold water for 12 hours before eating. This reduces phytic acid, sometimes called an anti-nutrient, which binds to magnesium, zinc, and iron in the gut and reduces their absorption. Soaked almonds have a softer texture and a slightly less bitter flavor. Peel the skins if you like. They slip off easily after soaking. This is not a modern biohacking trick. This is simply how almonds were often prepared before people began eating everything straight from a sealed foil bag. The almond tree was chosen to represent watchfulness, perhaps because whoever watches carefully enough eventually notices that the smallest, most overlooked things are the ones worth taking seriously. Number 10. Cashews, the quiet mineral that calms the nervous system. The cashew tree, Anacardium occidentale, is native to northeastern Brazil, where it was cultivated by indigenous communities long before European arrival. When Portuguese sailors brought it to Goa in the 16th century, it spread rapidly across India, East Africa, and Southeast Asia. What they carried was the nut. What they often didn't record was that traditional Brazilian communities used the cashew apple, the fleshy fruit attached to the nut, for food and medicine, the bark for astringent applications, and the leaves in herbal preparations. When a culture makes use of nearly every part of a plant across generations, it usually means prolonged. Careful observation found value at multiple levels. An ounce of cashews provides approximately 74 milligrams of magnesium, but the specific relevance of cashews to nervous system health lies in magnesium's regulatory role in voltage-gated calcium channels. In simple terms, calcium excites nerve cells. Magnesium modulates that excitation. When magnesium levels fall, nerve signals can become amplified. The system becomes more reactive, more sensitive, more easily triggered. This manifests in many adults over 60 as restlessness, difficulty sleeping, heightened anxiety without obvious cause, or muscles that refuse to fully release tension. Cashews also contain significant tryptophan, an amino acid that serves as a precursor to serotonin, and, downstream, melatonin. The combination of magnesium and tryptophan in one food makes cashews an interesting evening snack for people struggling with sleep quality. The science connecting magnesium to sleep architecture is more robust than most people realize. A study published in the Journal of Research in Medical Sciences found that magnesium supplementation in elderly adults with insomnia improved sleep efficiency, sleep time, and early morning awakening. With results researchers considered clinically meaningful. A small handful of raw cashews in the mid-afternoon, or stirred into a warm dish in the evening, is a very different intervention than a sleeping pill. It works more slowly. It doesn't force sedation. What it does is help create the internal conditions under which the nervous system can find its own way toward rest. Blend them raw into sauces. Use them in stir-fries. Eat them slowly. The cashew never shouts about what it does. It simply supports the body quietly from the inside. Number 9. Black beans, the civilization builder. There are foods that feed a person for a day, and there are foods that help build civilizations. Black beans belong to the second category. Across Mesoamerica, beans were not a side dish. They were part of an agricultural system so ecologically sophisticated that it humbles modern farming. The Three Sisters corn, beans, and squash were grown in close relationship. The corn stalk gave the bean vine a structure to climb. The bean root fixed atmospheric nitrogen into the soil, reducing the need for external fertilizer. The squash leaves spread along the ground, suppressing weeds and conserving moisture. 3 plants. 3 functions. 0 waste. It wasn't just farming, it was applied ecology, developed through centuries of observation, with no laboratory and no government grant. A half cup of cooked black beans provides approximately 60 milligrams of magnesium, along with potassium, iron, folate, and slow-digesting carbohydrates. But the deeper nutritional story is in the gut. Black bean fiber, particularly resistant starch and pectin, selectively feeds beneficial bacteria, particularly bifidobacterium and lactobacillus species. These bacteria produce short-chain fatty acids, including butyrate, which maintains the integrity of the intestinal lining and has been studied for its role in modulating inflammation throughout the body. A food that brings magnesium while simultaneously improving the conditions under which magnesium is absorbed is more valuable than its mineral number alone suggests. The preparation wisdom is not complicated, but it is essential. Soaking dried black beans for 12 to 24 hours. Then discarding the soaking water and cooking them fresh. Reduces oligosaccharides, the compounds responsible for digestive discomfort, and reduces cooking time. Traditional Mexican and Central American households did this routinely. Not because they'd read a paper on FODMAP content, but because they'd watched what happened when they didn't. Eat them in soups. Simmer them with onions, garlic, cumin, and bay leaf. Cook them with epazote, a traditional herb long used alongside beans in Mexican cooking, which traditional knowledge recognized as helping with digestibility, a claim that has since been examined for its essential oil content. The bean built civilizations. It can rebuild a mineral-depleted body. These are not unrelated facts. Number 8. Quinoa, the sacred mountain seed. The Inca Empire stretched across terrain that would defeat modern agriculture, altitudes above 12,000 feet. Temperatures that swung between burning sun and killing frost within a single day, soils that most crops couldn't survive. And yet, the empire fed millions across this landscape for centuries. The answer was, in significant part, the diversity of crops they had developed, and quinoa was among the most important plants. The Inca called quinoa chia mama, mother of all grains. It is technically not a grain, it's a seed of the chenopodium plant, related to beets, spinach, and the weed purslane. This botanical distinction matters. Quinoa carries a nutritional profile that separates it sharply from cereal grains. A half cup of cooked quinoa provides approximately 59 milligrams of magnesium, along with all 9 essential amino acids, iron, phosphorus, manganese, and significant fiber. The phrase complete protein is often mentioned in connection with quinoa, but the mechanism by which this relates to magnesium is rarely discussed. Magnesium is required for protein synthesis at the ribosomal level, specifically for stabilizing the ribosome structure and facilitating the transfer RNA reactions that assemble amino acids into proteins. A food that provides both magnesium and complete amino acids simultaneously gives the body both the mineral catalyst and the building materials for cellular repair in the same package. Here is the preparation detail that determines whether quinoa delivers on its promise or becomes a mildly bitter disappointment. The seed's outer coating saponin is a natural insect and bird deterrent with a sharp, soapy bitterness. Most commercial quinoa is pre-rinsed, but rinsing again in cold water through a fine mesh strainer for at least 2 minutes before cooking is worth the 30 seconds it costs you. Cook quinoa at a low simmer, not a rolling boil, with a 1:2 ratio of seeds to water. Covered for 15 minutes. Remove from heat and allow it to steam. Covered for another 5 minutes before fluffing. When Spanish colonizers reached the Andes, they recognized that controlling the food supply was a mechanism of control. Quinoa cultivation was actively discouraged. Land was redirected toward European crops. The seed survived in remote highland communities, that it is now available in every grocery store is a form of historical restoration that most shoppers walk past without noticing. Number 7. Spinach, the food that fed an exhausted prophet. Then he lay down and slept under the broom tree, and behold, an angel touched him, and said to him, Arise and eat. 1 Kings, chapter 19. The prophet Elijah has just fled for his life across the desert. He has traveled a full day into the wilderness, collapsed under a tree, and asked to die. He is not simply tired, he is physiologically depleted. The language of the text is precise. He has walked alone through extreme heat without adequate food or water. He has operated in a state of acute stress for an extended period, and then he collapses. The angel does not offer him a vision, a prophecy, or a theological argument. The angel offers him food, specifically, a cake baked on hot stones, and a jar of water. He eats, he sleeps. The angel comes again, arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you. He eats again, and then strengthened by that food, he walks 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mountain of God. This is not merely poetry. This is a description of what happens when a human body receives rapidly metabolizable carbohydrate alongside minerals after glycogen depletion and acute physiological stress. The body's glycogen stores the glucose held in the liver, and muscles are exhausted. Cortisol has been elevated for days. Electrolytes are depleted. The restorative protocol that follows is not complicated rest. Water, simple carbohydrate, and crucially, mineral replacement. The strength that came after was not miraculous in a biochemical sense. It was what recovery from depletion looks like when you give the body what it actually needs. We do not know exactly what grew near Elijah's broom tree, but we know what the ancient Near East had in abundance: dark leafy greens, prepared with olive oil and salt. Itahalt. Greens like spinach, or its ancient relatives, have been cultivated in the region since before written records. Persian records from the 7th century describe spinach being carried to China. Arab agricultural manuals of the 10th century discuss its cultivation in detail. Multiple civilizations recognized it as a restorative food. A half cup of cooked spinach provides approximately 78 milligrams of magnesium alongside iron, folate, potassium, and vitamin K. Cooking matters enormously here. Raw spinach contains oxalic acid, a compound that binds to calcium and magnesium in the gut and blocks absorption. A stack of raw spinach, leaves in a salad, delivers a portion of its minerals. The same leaves, briefly sautéed, deliver significantly more. Because heat breaks down oxalate structures and simultaneously reduces the volume so that a meaningful serving becomes possible without eating a salad bowl the size of a bicycle wheel. The precise preparation: warm olive oil in a pan over medium heat, not high heat, which degrades the oil and creates inflammatory compounds. Add 2 cloves of minced garlic. After 30 seconds, add fresh spinach. Salt lightly. Stir for 90 seconds to 2 minutes until just wilted. Remove from heat. The color should be bright, vivid green, not gray-green, which signals that the leaves have been overcooked and their magnesium-containing chlorophyll has been degraded. The angel said, "Arise and eat. The journey ahead is too great for you." That instruction was not metaphysical. It was physiological, and it is still true. If this kind of ancient knowledge resonates with you, hit like and subscribe right now, because what's coming next goes even deeper. Number 6. Swiss chard, the warrior's green that asks for fire. Swiss chard is one of those vegetables that looks almost theatrical. Leaves so deeply green, they appear painted. Stems in shades of crimson, gold, white, and violet depending on the variety. It looks like it belongs in a painting of a Renaissance market. And yet, in many modern kitchens, it is completely forgotten. Chard belongs to the Beta vulgaris family, the same species as beet. Its cultivation traces back to the Mediterranean basin, where it was a significant food crop for centuries before it was largely displaced by more convenient alternatives. Greek physicians referenced it. Arab agricultural treatises described its cultivation in detail, In the Ottoman Empire, chard was a standard component of dishes that combined greens with olive oil, lemon, and sometimes pulses preparations that maximized both flavor and mineral bioavailability simultaneously. A half cup of cooked Swiss chard provides approximately 75 milligrams of magnesium, but chard brings something else that is rarely discussed. In general nutrition content, its stems are architecturally different from its leaves and contain different concentrations of minerals and fiber. Most people who cook chard strip the stems and discard them. This is a mistake. The stems require more heat, slice them thin, and add them to the pan 2 full minutes before the leaves. Cooked properly, they become tender, with a slight mineral sweetness that is deeply satisfying. Here's the compound level nuance. Swiss chard contains betalains, the pigment compounds responsible for the red and gold coloration in the stems. Betalains are found in very few food plants and are studied for antioxidant activity and their interaction with NF-kappa B, the cellular pathway that regulates inflammatory signaling. A food that provides magnesium, while simultaneously contributing to anti-inflammatory pathways through a compound almost no other plant carries that is not ordinary. Like spinach, chard contains oxalates. Cooking is not optional. Sauté it over medium heat with garlic, olive oil, and a squeeze of lemon at the end. The lemon does 2 things. It brightens the flavor and provides vitamin C, which research suggests may improve non-heme iron absorption from the same meal. Swiss chard asks for fire before it gives its strength. That may be why the modern world, which prefers food that requires nothing from us, quietly walked away from it. Number 5. Pumpkin, the Three Sisters Shield. If black beans were the nitrogen fixers in the Three Sisters system, and corn provided the structure, then squash and its close relative, pumpkin, was the shield. The broad, rough-textured leaves of squash plants sprawl across the ground like a living mulch, suppressing weed growth, conserving soil moisture, and protecting the root systems of its companion plant. This was not accidental. Indigenous agricultural scientists, and that is the precise and accurate term selected, cultivated, and bred these plants over thousands of years to maximize their cooperative function. A cup of cooked pumpkin flesh provides approximately 22 milligrams of magnesium, which is modest compared to the seeds discussed earlier. But a cup of pumpkin also delivers potassium, beta-carotene, vitamin C, and fiber. The combination matters for a specific reason. Potassium and magnesium are physiological partners in maintaining the electrical gradient across cell membranes, the mechanism by which your heart maintains its rhythm. Your neurons fire correctly, and your muscles contract and release. A food that delivers both is more cardiovascularly relevant than one that delivers either in isolation. Here is the aspect of pumpkin that most people have never heard: the seeds, flesh, flowers, and young leaves of pumpkin are all edible, and all were used. Aztec, Mayan, and various North American indigenous traditions cooked pumpkin flowers, rich in beta-carotene and zinc, as vegetables. Young pumpkin leaves were cooked like other greens across Central America and in parts of Africa where the plant was later introduced. The European and American reduction of pumpkin to a seasonal pie ingredient and of pumpkin seeds to a Halloween afterthought represents one of the more dramatic examples of nutritional simplification in food history. Roast pumpkin with olive oil, cumin, and coriander. The spices are not decorative. Cumin has been examined for its effects on digestive enzyme activity, and coriander seed oil has demonstrated antifungal and antimicrobial properties in laboratory studies. Roast at 400 degrees Fahrenheit until the edges caramelize. The caramelization, the Maillard reaction, produces flavor compounds that make the dish worth eating repeatedly, which is, ultimately, the prerequisite for any food to actually nourish you. Number 4. Avocado, the vitality fruit that survived bad science. The avocado has a history of surviving things that should have destroyed it. Most notably, several decades of institutional advice telling people to avoid fat. For most of the second half of the 20th century, avocados were classified alongside dangerous foods simply because they contained fat. The reasoning that dietary fat caused heart disease was, as subsequent decades of research would clarify, significantly more complicated than the original hypothesis suggested. The fat in avocados is predominantly oleic acid, the same monounsaturated fatty acid that defines olive oil, and that research has consistently associated with reduced inflammatory markers and improved lipid profiles. One medium avocado provides approximately 58 milligrams of magnesium, along with more potassium than a medium banana. Significant fiber and fat-soluble vitamins, including vitamin K and vitamin E. The potassium content is relevant to cardiovascular function in a specific way. The kidneys use potassium as part of the mechanism for regulating sodium excretion, which in turn affects blood pressure. A diet chronically low in potassium, which describes a great many modern diets, impairs this regulatory mechanism. The avocado was not causing heart disease during those decades. The diet that surrounded it was. Here's the preparation detail most people miss. Avocado contains the highest concentration of beta-sitosterol, a plant sterol examined for its relationship with cholesterol metabolism just beneath the dark outer skin. In the layer of flesh closest to the skin, peeling an avocado with a knife, the way you'd peel an apple, discards a meaningful portion of this compound. The traditional preparation: cut the avocado lengthwise, remove the pit, scoop the flesh cleanly with a large spoon while pulling the skin back, preserving the dark green layer adjacent to the skin. This is not a trivial nuance. Eat it with lime and coarse salt. Add it beside beans and eggs. Use it where you would otherwise reach for something that comes in a foil package and lasts for 3 years. The avocado was cultivated in Mesoamerica for at least 10,000 years before the modern world briefly declared it dangerous. The body never forgot what it was. Number 3. Flaxseed, the seed that carried civilizations. Linen and nutrition come from the same plant. Linum usitisssimum, the common flax, gave ancient civilizations both fabric and food simultaneously. Egyptian mummies were wrapped in linen, woven from flax fibers. The same plant seeds were pressed for oil, ground into meal, and incorporated into bread. Excavations at Çatalhöyük in Turkey, one of the earliest known settlements in human history, occupied around 7,500 BCE, found evidence of flax cultivation. The Ebers Papyrus, written around 1,550 BCE, references linseed preparations for internal conditions. Greek physicians described flaxseed as an emollient food that softened the digestive tract. In the 8th century, Charlemagne passed laws requiring his subjects to consume flaxseed, reportedly because he considered it essential to health. He was not a nutritionist. He was an emperor who had observed what happened to populations that ate it and populations that didn't. A tablespoon of ground flaxseed provides approximately 27 milligrams of magnesium alongside alpha-linolenic acid, ALA, the plant omega-3 fatty acid, and lignans, which are phytoestrogen compounds examined extensively for their relationship with hormone-sensitive cancers, particularly breast cancer. Research published in journals, including the Journal of Clinical Oncology and others, has produced findings that researchers describe as warranting continued investigation. Flaxseed also contains mucilaginous fiber that behaves somewhat like chia gel in the digestive tract, slowing absorption and feeding beneficial bacteria. The preparation requirement is non-negotiable. Whole flax seeds are coated in a hard outer shell that the human digestive tract cannot break down efficiently. The seeds pass through largely intact, delivering their nutrition to nothing. They must be ground. A small coffee grinder dedicated to seeds works perfectly. Grind what you will use in 1 to 2 weeks. Store the ground meal in an airtight container in the refrigerator and add a tablespoon to oatmeal, yogurt, soups, or smoothies each morning. The oil in ground flaxseed oxidizes when exposed to heat, light, and oxygen, which is why storage matters. An emperor legislated its consumption. A refrigerator door is the minimum we can do. The flax plant fed civilizations in 2 directions at once, clothing them and nourishing them from the same stalk. We kept the linen and forgot the meal. It's time to remember both. Number 2. Purslane. It grows in cracks in the sidewalk. It appears uninvited in garden beds. It has fleshy, slightly translucent leaves and reddish stems that lie close to the ground, spreading outward like a small green star. Many people see it, identify it as a weed without really looking. Reach for the hoe and pull it out. That plant is Portulaca oleracea, purslane. And what most people composting it don't realize is that they are discarding one of the most nutritionally remarkable plants that will ever find its way into their garden. Purslane is a magnesium source comparable to cultivated greens, approximately 38 to 68 milligrams per cooked cup, depending on growing conditions. But its most extraordinary attribute has nothing to do with magnesium. Purslane contains the highest concentration of omega-3 fatty acids found in any leafy plant. Not a small amount, a meaningful amount. Specifically, EPA and ALA. In proportions that are unusual even by the standards of plant-based omega-3 sources. Fish accumulate EPA and DHA by eating algae and other marine plants that synthesize it. Purslane synthesizes ALA directly, which the body partially converts to EPA. For people who do not eat fish, the implications are significant. This fact was not discovered by a recent laboratory study. Hippocrates knew purslane. The ancient Greeks ate it. The Ebers Papyrus, the Egyptian medical papyrus, compiled around 1550 BCE, references it for internal conditions. In traditional Mexican and Central American cuisine, it is still eaten regularly, cooked with chili, garlic, onion, and egg. In Turkish cuisine, it appears in salads and yogurt-based preparations. In traditional Chinese medicine, it has been used externally and internally for conditions associated with inflammation and heat. Multiple cultures en multiples continents, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years. Looked at the same uninvited plant and made the same decision. This belongs on the table. Industrial agriculture created the concept of the weed. A weed is simply a plant growing somewhere inconvenient to a business model. Purslane does not propagate through seed sales. It cannot be patented. It cannot be packaged. It grows for free in places that would otherwise produce nothing. This is precisely why it was never promoted, not because it lacked value, but because it lacked a supply chain. Learn to identify it with certainty before eating it. The plant is low-growing, succulent in texture, with paddle-shaped leaves. Ralph, it has a mild, slightly lemony tartness and a pleasant crunch. Briefly sautéed with garlic and olive oil, it becomes tender and earthy. Add it to eggs, soups, or grain bowls. Use it as you would any dark, leafy green, with the additional understanding that it is delivering something almost no cultivated leafy green provides: meaningful plant-based long-chain omega-3 fatty acids. It has been growing at your feet and asking for nothing in return. The only question is whether you'll finally let it onto the plate. Number 1. Amaranth, the banned medicine that refused to die. And now we come to the food with the most extraordinary story on this entire list. In the Aztec world, amaranth was not merely food. It was sacred. Ceremonies held in honor of the sun, god Huitzilopochtli, involved large figures sculpted from a mixture of amaranth seeds and agave syrup, what some accounts describe as a kind of dough, which was then broken apart and distributed among participants to eat. Amaranth, in this context, was both nutritional sustenance and theological statement. It was a food that carried identity, belief, survival, and power in the same seed. When the Spanish arrived in the early 16th century, they recognized with the strategic intelligence of colonizers that destroying a people's food system weakens them in ways that armies alone cannot accomplish. Amaranth cultivation was banned. In some accounts, the penalty was death. The fields were destroyed. The ceremonies that carried the seed were suppressed. The plant itself was declared dangerous. An empire tried to erase it. It failed. Amaranth survived in remote fields. in the hands of people who refuse to forget. As an ornamental garden, plant grown for its dramatic seed, plumes still sometimes sold as decorative celotias and related varieties by people who had no idea they were looking at a fugitive crop. Across Africa, Asia, and parts of Latin America, amaranth continued to be eaten as a leafy vegetable by communities who had never been told it was worth erasing. In Ethiopia, in Nigeria, in India, in China, people were cooking amaranth greens, the same way people in Mexico had cooked them before anyone tried to stop them. The nutritional profile of amaranth is extraordinary, precisely because the plant evolved to sustain people under difficult conditions. A cup of cooked amaranth leaves provides approximately 73 milligrams of magnesium, along with calcium, iron, vitamin A in the form of beta-carotene, vitamin C, and significant amounts of vitamin K. The leaves are eaten exactly as you would prepare spinach or Swiss chard. The seeds, technically a pseudo-cereal, like quinoa, can be cooked as a porridge, popped like tiny popcorn in a dry pan, or ground into flour. Here is the compound-level detail that separates amaranth from most other greens. It contains squalene, a compound found in significant amounts in shark liver oil, olive oil, and very few plant sources in its seed oil. Squalene has been studied as an antioxidant, and for its potential role in supporting immune function, research is preliminary, and no therapeutic claims are warranted. But the presence of squalene in a leafy grain crop is biologically unusual. Amaranth also contains beta-cyanins, similar to the betalain pigments in Swiss chard, that contribute to anti-inflammatory signaling through NF-kappa B modulation. The practical preparation is simple. Young amaranth leaves are available at some farmers' markets, in gardens, or as a foraged plant in areas where it grows as a roadside weed. Sauté them in olive oil with garlic for 2 to 3 minutes until wilted. Add salt, a squeeze of lemon, and serve alongside beans, eggs, or grain. If you use the seeds, rinse them as you would quinoa. Then, simmer 1 cup of seeds in 2.5 cups of water for approximately 20 minutes, until tender and gelatinous. The texture is porridge-like, warm, deeply satisfying. Amaranth reminds us that food is never simply food. Food is memory. Food is cultural identity. Food is independence. A community that can grow mineral-rich crops in its own soil from saved seeds is meaningfully more self-sufficient than one dependent on packaged products shipped from distant supply chains. The Spanish Empire understood this. They tried to use it as a weapon of control, erase the seed, and weaken the people. The seed survived. This is what the most important foods do. They outlast whatever tries to destroy them. The closing thought: what processing actually destroys? There is a principle that runs through every food on this list, and it is the most important thing in this entire video. Magnesium does not disappear from food by accident. It disappears by design. When whole wheat is refined into white flour, the bran and germ, where the magnesium resides, are physically removed. A slice of bread made from whole wheat contains several times the magnesium of a slice made from refined white flour. When seeds are processed into refined oils, the mineral-containing solids are discarded. When vegetables are canned in water that is drained before eating, a portion of the water-soluble minerals goes with the liquid poured down the drain. When food is stripped of its outer layers, the skin of the potato, the hull of the grain, the bran of the seed, the mineral protection disappears because that is precisely where the plant concentrates it. Seeds protect their magnesium in the layers closest to the surface, because magnesium is part of what makes germination possible. When you remove those layers for palatability, shelf life, or appearance, you remove the mineral intelligence of the food along with them. This is not a conspiracy. It is an engineering choice made for reasons that have nothing to do with your nutrition. Refined foods are cheaper to produce, easier to transport, longer lasting on shelves, and more consistent in texture and flavor. Those are business priorities. They are not nutrition priorities. And the gap between those two things is where deficiency lives. The foods on this list require something from you. Pumpkin seeds need to be soaked. Flaxseed needs to be ground. Swiss chard needs to be cooked. Beans need to be soaked overnight. Purslane needs to be identified and harvested. Amaranth needs to be found, grown, or foraged. These are not inconveniences. These are the actions that maintain the bioactive intelligence of real food. When we remove those actions from the food system, we didn't simplify eating. We quietly starved ourselves of the minerals our bodies had depended on for 10,000 years. The question this raises is larger than any video can fully answer. If our grandparents ate pumpkin seeds and simmered beans and kept the skins on their potatoes and cooked their greens until tender, and our generation arrived at a historic level of convenience, food, accompanied by a historic level of nutrient insufficiency, what does that tell us about the direction we've been traveling? That question is worth sitting with after this video ends. If this gave you something real, a food you're going to find this week, a preparation you're going to change, and a different way of seeing what's already on your plate, then do one simple thing before you go hit subscribe. Press the notification bell and share this with someone in your life who is still peeling their potatoes and throwing away their pumpkin seeds. Drop a comment below and tell me which food on this list surprised you most. Was it the purslane growing at the edge of your garden path, the amaranth that survived a colonial ban, the spinach that becomes a different food? The moment you apply heat, I read every comment. We go deep on ancestral foods, healing plants, and nutritional wisdom every week. The people who need this haven't all found it yet. When you share, you help them get here. I'll see you in the next one. This video is for educational and informational purposes only, and is not intended as medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making significant changes to your diet, particularly if you are managing a medical condition or taking medications.